This call is being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, please disconnect at this time.
Hi guys, welcome to the call today.
Today is April 11th, 2019.
And our topic is, he's almost throwing the ball. I just got pelted with a ball. Zorian's here. The topic today is I create my universal awareness in life. If I am in fear, I am in the way of my own creation. And the exercise, Peter's already done the exercise, so that was fun to see that. But let's talk a little bit about, hang on one second. I need to pull in. So when we're living our lives and we're creating our experience, hang on guys, I need another minute longer. I didn't have enough prep time and I'm still
Out of your body.
Yeah, give me a second to we were working on a project. So I'm going to take just a minute longer and do a little more grounding and then I'll be ready.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, and I'm just going to start this over and I'll clip that first part out. I appreciate you guys being patient with me. Hi everybody, welcome to the call. Today is
April 11th, 2019.
And the topic is
creating my universal awareness in life.
okay. And we think about our creation and how we move forward in life and what would stop us from creating what we want. And it really comes down to fear. Fear being the absence of light, fear being the absence of any kind of support. It's being, we're missing all of those things when we're in fear. And it's not that they're not still available, it's just fear blocks our ability to be aware of them, to pull them into our space. So when we have fear, it's impossible to create the reality we want. And one of the biggest ways to get away from that is to recognize what we want. When we start looking at what we want, that's when we realize how we've gotten in the way of that. And I know Peter has already done the My Universe exercise today, and his response is brilliant. So Peter, do you mind sharing?
Christine, no, I don't mind sharing, but I forgot what I said.
Well, you basically just said that when you started looking, you realized that there was so much more, that you could ask for more. That did you start to notice that how you were in the way before with just your habitual thoughts and the way you think, you start stopping a lot of the things that we could ask for, and we could have a much broader, much more brilliant experience if we just took the time and looked at what it is that we've stopped asking for.
Yeah, I know one of the things that happens a lot happens to me is that I just get into a habit or get into a habitual way of being, and I forget about noticing what's possible.
Yeah.
And recently it's just like more times I'm noticing just being calmer, quieter, and not sitting around focusing and thinking hard, but just like, oh gosh, that would be nice. Or, yeah, no, I could do that, couldn't I? So it's just this sort of a sense of more possibility.
Definitely. Wonderful. And that's the basic concept too, is awareness. So if you take the time, you slow down, you pay attention, and you do contemplation exercises or meditation that stops, the monkey mind, then this universal energy just kind of supports us and flows into us and allows us to create from this place of awareness versus from either a place of fear or obligation or any other ways we might restrict ourselves. Another thing to be aware of is that fear occurs when we enter fight or flight. I mean, it's the two are tied together. You don't have fight or flight without a fear. And when you have that, you have a lack of energetic support. Now, what you realize is that it's the beliefs that are in conflict with your truth that are bringing you into this place. So when we get into that situation, we want to back up And we want to see what habitual patterns are being held by these beliefs that we're not necessarily consciously aware of in every moment. So what we have then is we can go into a stable questioning process and say, okay, I don't feel like I'm getting what I want in my world right now. I'm sorry, my daughter's dancing in the background, and she's a huge distraction for me. Sarah. Okay, but you're going to have to do that away from me, please. I wish you could see her. She's so cute. Let's see. Sorry, today's just one of those days. I'm not with it. Okay, hang on. In order to create, we need to have free flow energy. And when we're in synchronicity and life feels really good, those are moments that are easily recognized. It's not that it's something we can't see. It's always there. And it's our narrowed focus, it's our judgments, our attachments, our conclusions, it's all of these things that are getting in the way of our creation. So for instance, if I want to create a pile of money, and money is not something I would normally reference, but if I did want to create a pile of money, if I think about money, I'm not going to get money because money is a physical thing. But if I think about what I would do with the money, I'm much more likely to attract money to accomplish something that will give me an emotional or a deeper response. When we're creating our existence, it can't be solely, our focus can't be on the physical. It has to be more on internal. You know, what joy will I have with this money? How will I live my life? So we turn that focus away from, oh, I might not have enough, or any other thing that might be second fear. And we always bring it back to joy and want and desire and need. Another thing to keep in mind, too, is we're going to get what we need in the world, not necessarily what we want. So when we're creating something that we don't want, we have to see what need is that meeting. If we slow down and we pull back and we recognize the interference that's going on between the external and the internal, we can often short-circuit this system that we've put in place that we're not enjoying anymore.
So I'm going to just bring that into an example. So let's say that you're living in a life where there's something that happens that you're really not happy with. It's not necessarily true that, I mean, you don't want that because it's not pleasant, it's considered suffering, but it may be something you need because of something you're trying to learn from it or an aspect of yourself you're trying to develop because of it.
Right. So for instance, if I say if I'm looking to have a world where I create money, and I have an aspect of myself that doesn't allow for that, I'm going to be attracting an experience to me that may create what I consider suffering.
Because of the lack of money.
Right. So it's kind of a circle of information that travels around. And to learn how to pay attention to these cycles and what it is we're creating, why we're creating it, what it is we need from it, allows us then to sometimes adjust it. So for instance, I had a heart attack. And after the heart attack, I would go into these arrhythmias, and I kept ending up in the hospital. And I had to ask myself, okay, why do I keep ending up in the hospital? Well, I want my heart to be better. I want to not have this experience anymore. But what I didn't realize is that I hadn't dealt with the fear that if I were to die, that my family was going to be left alone. So, okay, so I'm having these arrhythmias because they're tied to a fear. When I looked back, I released the fear. I accept that if I do die, that my children will go on with their lives. Their lives are not mine to begin with. So the fact that I'm worried about controlling their experience is me doing something external. In order to create the experience I want, which is to stop going to the hospital because I'm not enjoying it, I have to look at what fears or what form of protection this experience is giving me. Well, if I'm afraid I'm going to die, every time my heart jumps a little, then my fear, oops, this might be it. Let's make it more obvious. Therefore, she'll go to the hospital. Therefore, she won't die. It becomes this self-prophecy and this self-creation that goes over and over. So realizing how we're doing something to ourselves is one of the best steps in learning to create the reality that we want. Now, in the My Universe exercise, there's the concept of making a list of something that I want. So in a relationship is a good example. In my relationship with Laura, maybe I want more time with her. She's too busy and she doesn't give me her time. Maybe I want her to go to dinner with me and have us go out instead of just always staying at home working together. And, there's anything I want on the list. So I don't put on the list that I want more time. I put on the list how I want to spend that time. I want to, again, like maybe I want to go out to dinner with her. So I want, in my relationship with Laura, I want to go out to dinner. And I put that down. Hang on, I'm going to back up from that. I'm going to use an actual factual example of a past one that I did versus trying to imagine a future one. This will be easier for everyone. With my partner, when we started our relationship, he had a lot of what I thought were really strong beliefs. And I was looking at how he was doing things, and I was like, okay, this isn't what I want in my life. And we would tend to get into a fight because I would stay too selfless too long, and then there would be a fight because you can only hold that so long. And he would break up with me, and he would leave, and I would be like, okay, well, that's not necessarily what I wanted. I waited too long, and he didn't like the situation. And so I would go to my list and say, in the perfect partner, I need somebody who does not have a religious belief that controls their actions. I grew up strong military Catholic, and it made sense to me that Catholics, because this was my belief, that all Catholics follow these same rules. But then I would hear he grew up Catholic too, so I made these assumptions that he was guided by the same rules I was guided by. But then he would turn around and drink, have a beer and such, which again is accepted in the Catholic religion, but it's not the Catholic way I grew up. We didn't go out and get drunk. We didn't swear. We didn't gamble. We didn't do a lot of things. And the assumption was that all Catholics were this way. And he grew up in a whole other country with completely different religion, even though he was Catholic. So I was stuck in these assumptions that he was the same as me, and they become a trap. So my own thoughts were creating this trap. And then because I didn't see him as the same, and because I was overwhelmed, then I was in fear. And so now I'm creating, again, a double whammy on myself. So when I back up from that thought and I go to my list and I make the list, okay, I want somebody without a religious dogma that keeps them behaving in a way that doesn't meet my needs. And I want to also be free in my own relationship of this dogma. And in doing so, another thing that happens is fear sets in. Well, if I'm not this, what will my life look like? How will I experience this reality? And what I have to do next is I have to be willing to let go of this fear. So I can't possibly know what my life is going to look like, but I know this is what I want. So instead of being afraid of getting what I want, I accept that the universe is going to know and to bring to me through the law of attraction exactly what I need, even though it may not look like what I want. Now, that's a key. It's trusting that we're going to get what we need, even if it doesn't look like what we want. And that's how we keep adjusting this, is because this is how it works. The energy works. It brings to us what we need. Okay, so I got, in my relationship, somebody who has a different side of the same religion. I already was not living as a Catholic. I'm just living as somebody who has their own spiritual guidance and doesn't follow a set religion at all. And I'm trusting that. So why would I still be bringing pain from him not being what I assume he's going to be when I've already let go of it myself? So when I made these adjustments on this list, it gave me more support to really see that, oh, I'm holding him to something that he never said, that he never did, and I've made the situation uncomfortable for both of us.
So can I ask you,
Mm-hmm.
what is it that you needed from that situation that you didn't want? Exactly.
That time in my life, I was trying to live in freedom. I had been married for 20 plus years, and I'd been the mother to 6 kids, and I did everything for everyone all day long. And I was at a moment in my life where most of my kids were grown. Our youngest was over at her dad's house. I'm living in a place by myself, and I don't know what freedom feels like. And in walks this person in my life who seems to be so free, but every turn he seems to be contradicting the things that he says about himself. And he was saying stuff to me about religion, and that's when I started getting that rigid look of who he was, and I started holding him to, but you said you're Catholic, and if you're Catholic, how can you be angry? How can you be saying these things about other people? Because as a Catholic, this is not who I was, and this is not what I understood. But again, I'd already relieved myself of those own pressures, but I was still seeing other people through the dogma.
So can I kind of ask if this was going on? You needed freedom. Someone came into your life where you already had expectations and not the freedom to see them as they were presenting, but you were seeing them through your own perceptions, and you needed to free yourself from that.
Yes.
Okay.
And what the list did for me was when I put that on the list, we'd already broken up, and so I didn't want this in my next relationship. And when I put it on the list, even though we hadn't spoken for more than a week, even though we had no contact and no intention of getting back together, I put it on the list, and I said, it doesn't matter who matches this list. What I want is this experience in my life. I wanted this freedom. I wanted this love. I wanted, again, whatever was on my list. And every single time I did this list, within minutes, he would contact me. It was the strangest, most obvious experience of me being responsible for the creation of my reality that I'd ever had. And it happened, I would say, a good 8 times in our relationship. Because the first 5 times he broke up with me, and then I broke up with him after that because I just had enough. I said, no, I'm done with you. But every time when we would move away, and I would go back to my list, because, again, I'm looking for a relationship, and I'm wanting to draw it to me. And I'm putting on this list what I want in the relationship. And I would be heartbroken, and I would say to myself, okay, I really thought it was going to be him, because when we met, we both had this experience of, you're my gift. I've been waiting my entire life for this gift of another person that I have this connection with. I mean, because it was such love and such joy and such excitement. But it kept breaking. And part of it, like Laura was able to help you guys hear, is that I wanted freedom, and I kept putting myself in a box and then blaming him for my box. So every time I'd go back to the list, and I would be willing that, okay, it doesn't have to be him, but whoever it is has to meet these needs. Because I was the one putting him in the box with me, when I released the expectation, the attachment, and the control, he was able to step up and show me he was this free person. He did match up with my need and what I really wanted in my relationship. And so he kept coming back.
So I'm going to bring this up. It might not belong, especially in this particular system, but it does belong in the whole relationship concept that we're doing this month. The relationships that we have, the problems that exist in our relationships are to help us to break our habits and our false belief systems and our perceptions to give us what we need. And if we end up switching relationships instead of learning what it is that we're asking to learn, the need will show up with someone else.
Right.
In a new relationship. It may show up in a different way, but it will be the same thing because you attract what you need.
Yes. So when we talk about baggage in relationships and how you take your baggage with you, this is why. My relationship is never about the external person. I have already drawn to me what I need in a relationship. So to work within the confines of my own experience, my own existence, my own choices, that this is where my awareness needs to be. And so I was married to a man who had a substance abuse problem. And then I chose another partner who appeared to me to have a substance abuse a substance abuse problem, but it was lighter. It went from one very deep, dark substance abuse to something that was socially acceptable and very light. I started to realize that I was the one carrying this belief system based on my religion that I'd been raised, that these things none of them are good no matter what. That's how I was raised. So it was really difficult for me to see somebody to have the freedom to get drunk and behave the way that my partner was behaving, because I had this, all I could see was, this is wrong, this is wrong. And even when I did try to enjoy it, and there was joy in there, and getting drunk with him and having fun. There was fun there, but I couldn't sustain that because I hadn't broken the dogma, I hadn't broken the control. And so I was drawing to me, in my experience, this freedom. And that's where I am today, where if he wants to have a drink, he has a drink. If I want to have a drink, I have a drink.
Okay, so you believed something was wrong, and because that was a false belief, it kept showing up in your life. And as long as you kept judging it as wrong, it would keep showing up until you finally got to the truth of the matter. And now that you're at the truth of the matter, that it doesn't feel wrong or show up as wrong for you anymore, then it's a non-issue.
Yes.
Okay. Because I've never had that problem where I thought it was wrong, and I've never had a problem with anyone that has had substance abuse.
Interesting, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So that,
and in fact, my husband doesn't drink or smoke or do anything now.
So it's just another way of showing how we're drawing things to our lives and how we're the creators. And I always knew when I accepted false beliefs as a kid, I could feel it. I knew when it happened. But because it happened so long ago, I didn't know how to find my way back to what they were and to undo those. And eventually that's what we're all doing as adults, is we're going back in and we're undoing these holds that are keeping us in places that we don't want. There are people who can live their whole lives without having to undo things. They can just hold on to it. But we're asking for something different. As a group now, we're asking for this truth, this reality, this ability to manifest, this ability to ascend into a new experience in our lives. We don't want to just exist. We want to create and manifest amazing, magical experiences.
Yeah, we want to find joy and be in joy in the human experience. And that goes back to a conversation that Christine and I were having earlier. What's beyond joy? But that's for another time that we'll talk about later.
Does anyone have any comments or questions?
Is this still going on?
Mm-hmm. There's people there.
Yeah.
Okay, good. It's so quiet. I'm like, are we just talking to the air?
Christine?
Yes?
Hi. Yeah, this is Peter.
Yes.
Yeah. It's a different take on sort of the same dynamic that you're doing. Is that one of the ways that I've sort of evolved into holding things is that I can't, I think what a lot of people do is they have a picture of how they want their life to be, and then they go out and they try to arrange the circumstances to look like their picture.
Yes.
And it's a very, very frustrating experience. And I had a person say to me a long time ago, he says, well, he says, you're kind of doing it the hard way. The easy way is adjust your picture to look like what you got.
Mm-hmm. That's where appreciation and gratitude come in.
Yeah, but it's also realizing that you have the ability to look at something from a perspective that feels better. And so kind of what's been happening to me is, no matter what circumstances show up in my life, is I just have created a habit of holding those looking for a way to hold those circumstances so that I can win with it, so that I'm appreciating whatever the circumstances are, whether it's a person, an emotional feeling, a financial situation, the weather, a flat tire. It doesn't matter what it is. Just looking for, how is this perfect for me right now? And, and I have desires to have things in my life. So I look at, well, how is this forwarding those desires? Or how is this moving me? And like you're saying, you don't always get what you want, but you get what you need. And so it's developing a habit of looking at things in that light. I obviously need this. How do I tell? It's here.
Yeah.
Doesn't need to go any further than that. That's how I know I need it. And now it's like, okay, well, how is this working? How does this fill a need? What need is it, and how does it fill it?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and this is Faith. And one of the things the ways that I've kind of looked at the situation for a long time is that everything that's in front of me is stage that has been perfectly set for my next moment. And it's my job to see how it's perfect. And if I think it's the wrong stage, I've missed the point, because, of course, it's impossible for it to be the wrong stage. It is absolutely perfect for me in that moment. And so it's just my job to see how it is. How it's perfect.
It's like in Harry Potter when Dumbledore tells Harry what you see in the mirror of Erised. I don't know if y'all have ever read that, but he says,
I've read it, yeah.
the most, the happiest man would look in and see nothing, but the mirror shows you pretty much what you desire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or it shows me the places where I have limiting myself.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I said earlier in an email that I got to see that, this whole thing of be careful what you pray for. It's that I might desire or pray for freedom, and what I get to see is, how do I keep myself from having that? And those are usually the things that show up on my stage as gifts, are the ways in which I limit myself.
Which is sometimes uncomfortable.
Really.
Yes. And this is yes, everything's spot on. Because how am I creating my universe and my experience is by limiting it. And so that's when you look at it and it doesn't look like what you expected to look at, it's because you've created the limiting factors. And you have to go back and do what it is I'm doing that I'm using to limit myself. And that's how I was limiting my freedom, was by using the dogma of society and just social beliefs. And I was entrenched in them, even though I thought I had escaped them. They were so deeply ingrained that they were subconsciously being, bringing up experiences. And until I went back and I undid all of those deeper storage of this information, they just kept occurring. Once it was done, then it was done.
So this is kind of like a macrocosm and microcosm thing, because in order to be here in the first place, we had to limit ourselves. So now we're going back to the macrocosm from the microcosm.
Yeah, I had this is Faith still. I had a vision once of myself as a winged being that was trying to fly, and I panned down myself to my feet and saw that somebody was holding on to my feet, and then I thought it was me. It was like, the cosmic joke, who's really in my way of my flying is me.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. I had put that boot picture up at the beginning of the study with the little boy who's the boot stepping on his face, and you're so sad for a second, and then when you get the next frame, you're like, oh yes, that's exactly my limitation. The only thing limiting my life is me,
because they're holding the boot himself.
Right. And I want to give another step to the process that be really beneficial, is to realize that we can't do this until we know what we want. So most of the limiting factors right now, how we restrain ourselves and how we stop our creation, is we're looking at what other people want. And that was the thing with my list, is when I made my list, it was only what I wanted in my relationship. I was no longer thinking of the other person. They could not impact my list, because if they did, then I wasn't meeting my needs. And so I had to see then, Sergio just kept proving to me that he was that he was the partner that I needed. That's how he kept showing up. And, you know, other people I dated, they fell away. They didn't, when the list went up, they just didn't match it. So they didn't come back into my life. But if I didn't know what it was I needed, then I didn't have a moment of creation. It was more of a waiting. And we can't draw to ourselves what we, you know, the things that we want based on just waiting. It has to be, again, I identify it, I recognize it, and I'm willing to accept it.
So if you all have ever read the book, I think it's called Conversations with the Devil by Napoleon Hill, he talks about this concept. What he calls that when you don't make your own decisions is called drifting. And if we're a purposeful being, then drifting is the opposite of what what we're here to be as purposeful beings.
Right. I mean, the only reason we start waiting anyway is because we have a belief system that thinks we have to wait. So we're told we can't have things as children. You know, we're told that you have to wait, and so we get into this habit. You know, again, now we're creating this experience of waiting versus creating what it is that we want to actually have in each moment. Does anyone have anything else?
Yeah, I mean, what you just said is there's another aside to that. Like on a daily basis, it's sort of gotten into the habit of. I mean, it sounds corny when I say it, but actually, if you let it sink in a little bit, it's not quite so corny. But it's like a philosophy of do the most fun thing first, do the next most fun thing second. If it's not fun, don't do it.
Yes.
And it sounds really corny, but you know, I'm really getting into this thing of using how it feels, paying attention to how it feels as like a GPS. And so it's like on a daily basis, you know, or moment to moment basis is how am I drawn? What's attractive to me? What, you know, where's the pull coming from? What do I have appetite for? You
right.
know, what that all of that, and it can be super simple stuff, or it can be very profound and complex.
Right.
But it's like moment by moment, I'm in motion, even if I'm sitting still. So moment by moment, I'm living, and I just always want to have my my compass pointed in the direction that feels good, and you know. So the whole most fun thing first, you know, is actually a pretty good guideline for that.
I have a small caveat to put into place there for some people that may need it. The video from yesterday about the car wash fits in with this concept because washing the car was fun for me. The idea, I was excited, but then in the moment that excitement was gone, and basically I stole it from myself. And to recognize that sometimes that is what we're doing, because, for instance, if I need to like taxes, you know, this tax season in America, I don't know where it is the rest of the world, but in America, we're just at the end of our tax season. And when we put something off, it's normally because there's some kind of fear or pressure or false belief behind it. For instance, that I'm not going to have my receipts ready, or, you know, whatever I might feel about my taxes, so I put it off. The longer I put it off, the more weight it carries, the more drag it has, because it's something that should already be in the past, and I've been pulling it with me into my future. So there's sometimes that feeling of unrest can be just as good a guidance system as joy, because I don't want to do my taxes. Okay, well, I've just created this whole big pile of stuff that's not true, making me feel like I don't want to do it when I know that I want to do it. So I just sometimes I set that pile aside, or I unpile it and realize what I've done to myself, and then I get it done, and then I have the return of the joy, because it was the stagnation of pulling something that should have already been done with me, and it becomes a big weight around my neck instead of the freedom that I'm seeking in every moment.
Yeah, I used to have a funny thing when when I was being a contractor in this very intense work situation and real complex. You know, I was making to-do lists, and it took me a little while to realize this, but what I started doing in my to-do list is I look at the to-do list and see the thing I was resisting the most, do that first. And then the next thing I resisting the most, do that, because I just want that energy out of the way.
Right.
You know, exactly what you're saying.
But it's two sides of the same coin. So one, if it's too much pressure, then it probably needs to be taken care of because you're carrying something you don't need. And the other is to find that, seeking the joy. So that's two sides of the very same coin, I think.
Yes, yes.
Right. Well, unless there's anything else, I think that's a good point to wrap up the call with.
Thank you. These are very helpful calls.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, guys. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This call has been recorded. This call is being recorded.